Welcome to Future Customer Value, where global thought leaders share their career-defining moments.
Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of Future Customer Value. Got a very exciting guest on today, Tanner Fritz. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sagar. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we are too, and excited for the chat and everything we're going to be talking about today. So, quick intro for Tanner, for those folks who may not know who he is. Tanner's a co-founder and chief customer officer at Aiwyn. Aiwyn is a SaaS platform that helps professional services firms speed up cash flow, revenue cycles, and really optimize the client experience. Fun fact about Tanner, he was a former college basketball player. I think you're the first college athlete who's come on to the show here. But following your illustrious career in the athletics world, Tanner started his career in tech and product in Charlotte. So we have that in common. We're both based in Charlotte. He first was in product leadership roles at Mood Media and Tykoon, eventually became the CTO at Speed Digital, which is a motorsports-focused platform, and then became the CTO at Sona MedSpa, which, if you're in the Charlotte area, a lot of people have heard of this on the radio and various ads. But it's a private equity-backed network of dermatology practices, and you oversaw digital transformation and tech-enabled growth, which is interesting, right? I think having that retail healthcare experience and SaaS experience is a pretty cool combination. So really excited to chat and get into it. But anything else you wanted to add or let the audience know before we dive in, Tanner?
You described my basketball career as much bigger than it was. So
Gotta hype you up. Come on now.
Love college basketball. No, I think you hit it up well. Thankful for a lot of the opportunities I've had to work in different industries and different phases of companies in terms of startups and grown companies and private equity, venture, all the above. So I think you hit it.
Awesome.
This podcast is brought to you by Foresight, a full-service value realization platform designed to help you unlock growth in every single account. For more information on Foresight, please email them at info@gainforesight.co. That is info@gainforesight.co, and they'll be in touch.
Well, let's kick off our conversation here with one of your earlier roles, where you were the CIO of a B2B SaaS company. Or sorry, you were implementing B2B SaaS at a company. And when we were talking in our pre-call, you're mentioning that this experience was so critical in your now role as a chief customer officer, because you're on the other side, you're the buyer.
Yeah.
Choosing and selecting these software. So put us back in those shoes and paint the picture of your world there. What types of organizations were you diligencing to bring in?
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things, I guess, even the step before that. So I was a first hire at a couple of software startups, right? That was my first few roles early in my career. And you're just kind of a gopher. You do whatever, right? You're just whatever I can do to provide value. But then I became the CIO this was at Sona, dermatology skincare group, what was really interesting there was, I was the buyer, and I had a charter to go and find the best in breed software all across at that point, that was the client patient experience for healthcare. And that really shaped my thinking around how do I find the best vendors out there? Who are the best vendors? And how do I make these things play nice? This is healthcare. And so healthcare at this point, still struggling with apps that played nice together, integrated. And so we were really focused on evaluating the client journey and figuring out, all right, how do we integrate this app here? How do we integrate that app there? All for specific desired outcomes. So a couple of things that came about through that, I really realized what the client experience on B2B SaaS looks like, because I was buying for the first time. This was Salesforce and MindBody and some enterprise SaaS in healthcare on the revenue cycle side. And I saw that there's really, really poor experiences and really phenomenal experiences. And out of that, I learned that I wanted to make sure that if I ever go do this again and I'm on the supplier side, the service side, the vendor side, that we do more than just provide user guides and Gantt charts. We focus a lot on the entire client experience. And that has really shaped my thinking now, right? So at Aiwyn, when we started Aiwyn, it became really easy for me to say, oh yeah, that I've just seen this, right? This whole story I saw play out. I saw the movie on how to do this well and not well. And in particular, I was really shaped by the entire experience being during prospecting to implementation to handoffs to now support, right? I was the recipient of about 6 of those different applications that we ended up implementing at my time at Sona. And it was just a stark difference when one did it well and the others kind of did it poorly in terms of just kind of saying, hey, go self-serve, here's some articles, versus hey, here's an LMS where you can come in and I can guide you, or let me get on a call with you, let me show up in person. A lot of those touch points really changed the game for which of those applications were well received and which ones we got value out of.
I think it's really critical to have both of those lenses when you're in this world of software, because it's experience, customer experience, client experience, so predicated on how you're getting value from the first touch point in the sales process. And if you're not seeing how this vendor or partner, whatever they call themselves, right, can help you achieve your business outcomes, you're going to lose that trust. So I think it's really cool to hear how you got that plethora of experiences. So talk to me about one experience that stood out in your mind as a buyer. What do they do really well that has persisted with you since then and that you want to replicate in your role?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the Mind Body tool was a tool that was in place when I got there. And MindBody's scheduling, resource management across the board for all sorts of different businesses, but we used it at Sona. And one of the main things that they did that was different was, hey, they said, hey, we're going to hold QBRs, but we want to get in person with you. We want to come out and see you all. At this point, this is pre-COVID, so this was happening sometimes with vendors, but not to this degree. And so they ended up really focusing on getting in person with us to understand, on year 6 of a contract, let's still do this. Let's still make sure we're coming out here. This is not, a customer that we're going to forget about. And that stood out to me, right? This was a relationship that was solid, but they still wanted to make sure that, hey, we're here, we're touching base with you, and we're not going anywhere. That was one learning for sure.
Got it. And what about the flip side, where somebody totally tanked the opportunity to create value with you and your team?
Yeah.
Never name names, but you can
Yeah.
talk about it in general terms.
Yeah, we ended up using a couple tools for the billing operation, and they they just didn't, we were nobody to them, right? Even though it was a 6-figure spend, and it was like, how is this possible, that we're just kind of out here, and there wasn't much from a relational perspective, there wasn't much from a understanding our desired outcomes, and that ended up translating into the platform churning a couple years later. And my takeaway there was there just wasn't a huge focus on giving us an account rep that we could get a hold of from a CSM or sales perspective, from an account management side of things, giving us the assets. Everything was I can remember we got the user guide. It was like a 65-page PDF, and you're like, this isn't going to provide the best outcome for
Nobody's
us in
reading
terms of self-service. Yeah. And it gets updated every 2 quarters, and it's got new things. And you're like, this is just not with the times. So those types of vendors, partners just aren't the ones that are going to make it in my mind.
Yeah.
They weren't viewing us as truly as a partner. They were viewing us as hey, somebody who's just a buyer. Here's kind of the information. Good luck. And that it ended up not resonating, not lasting.
Gotcha. That piece of the tech stack, billing platforms, from the outside looking in, would seem like, okay, that's a commodity platform, right? You need to pay people, process payments, etc. but you're talking about business outcomes there. They didn't try to understand your business outcomes. So do you feel that at any level of a technology in the stack, there are business outcomes that need to be articulated, or do you feel like there's some technologies that it's just a technology, right? Like, at what point do business outcomes become a focus area, or is it always there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think with most enterprise SaaS, you do need to have the business outcomes identified. I think of the tools that are more of a just a capability or a tool in your toolbox. Like for me, for instance, I love Superhuman. If you've used it, it's an email add-on, and they have a phenomenal onboarding, by the way, one-on-one video with somebody for every user, which is awesome. But I don't need to check in on my desired outcomes with that, right? Like I'm getting value out of it within the first week and figuring out if I'm going to keep this or not. And so they kind of won me early on. At this point, I don't need check-ins. I know I'm going to keep using this tool. So, I think it really comes back to, is this a enterprise tool? Is this a kind of this capability skill set add-on that gives you some superpowers like Superhuman? But I think you can make the argument for either. To me, I see the enterprise as saying, hey, I want to go back and make sure that this is doing the job to be done. And I have to tell the story, and I need to continue to prove out the value. That would be the difference. So yeah, I think you're spot on there with commodity versus not.
Got it. The point you made about the in-person interactions and how MindBody would make it a point to come out every year, have that discussion with you. I feel from seeing how you operate and you run your business and your team, there's a lot of similarities with Aiwyn. You spend a lot of time meeting your customers in person and taking the effort to meet them where they are professionally, but also personally. So talk to us about that. What has that yielded for you in terms of business value? How has that helped Aiwyn create more customer value and generate better outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge believer in getting out in person, and especially post-COVID. Nobody did it because you couldn't figure out when to do it and when was it comfortable. But at this point, I think in the enterprise SaaS side, you've just got to do it, right? And last year, I think I probably did 40 visits to customers on their turf, in addition to conferences and holding our user conference, all important, right? But every time I would finish one of those trips, I would think to myself, like, I need to do this more often, right? Every single time. So my takeaway is just that you hear things better, differently, with more context when you're in the room. And so for us at Aiwyn, we've uncovered, more detail on when things go awry and you just couldn't get that detail over Zoom. But usually we're uncovering major opportunities, context for the value that's being perceived, negative or positively, and you just get such a better picture. You can't get it over email, absolutely. You can get some of it over Zoom, but not all of it. You don't see the head nodding. You don't understand, the 6 people in a room who really are giving you their tidbits on why things went one way or the other. And so we're huge believers in this. We're focused on doing it both on the CS side, but with the executive team, with the sales team, with the marketing team, partnerships.
Yeah.
Like, there's a huge effort to get in person. And to get to our customers' turf in particular. We want to go where they are. I'm a big believer in understanding, them on their space and in their world, and going to break bread with them in their town and understanding all the things there. So absolutely love doing that. And the opportunities there are that you can find value. You can find ways to increase value, find ways to, turn over stones where there are issues that you need to fix and resolve. And then obviously there's opportunities that come about when you're building more relationships with additional stakeholders that come up during these meetings.
It's so powerful. Very few organizations do it nowadays. And I feel like once you reach this ultra enterprise where you have huge travel budgets, people are focusing on it. But I mean, Aiwyn is scalable, right? You are actively building the market. So follow-up question there is, what drove that organizational alignment? Because it's fascinating to hear that product, sales, marketing, post sales are all doing this, and it's hard to find in many organizations. I guess many uh, average organizations, right? Top down alignment of we have to do this across the board. This is how we're going to define our customer experience. So take the in-person example as a point here. How did that become part of your DNA?
Yeah, I think it comes from your leadership. So for us, our CEO, Justin Adams, had a consulting background and had already experienced this, knew that this was going to really be where some value would just uncover. And so when we have this take as a leadership team that, yeah, you got to get out there, we've got to go do this, then the budget is, allocated from the get-go. And now it's just increasing, to your point, right? So now we've got additional teams where we're saying, let's get aligned on figuring out if marketing's putting an event on in a metro market or at a conference, and which customers are going to be able to be there that we can go visit on their turf. If sales is doing some sort of sales event that they'd love for a customer to join, how does customer success get involved there? What are the conferences that we need to be aware of? All of those things are incredible opportunities just to build the relationships further and solidify the value that we're providing. It also gives us, like, what we end up finding is we interact with so many more people at our customer when we are in person in one of these areas. And so we end up hearing the narrative from somebody that we otherwise don't interact with in QBRs, that is either positive or negative, which is so valuable. Our customers are CPA accounting firms primarily, and so they're partnerships. And so we have some, focused personas that we're talking to all the time, but we don't get to hear often from the front line on, oh yeah, I had an experience with Aiwyn and it was positive or negative, unless we're in person, unless we're at events, unless we're where they are, right? So those opportunities come up and they really help drive our changes that we're going to make with products or how we're going to continue to go to market. So yeah, that all comes back to leadership, though. Leadership having the opinion that this is important.
It's fantastic to hear, and that's, again, I want to reiterate, rare in a lot of organizations that I've worked in and that we serve as a company, is you don't see a centralized alignment across various groups, and everybody's operating their own mental models, which ultimately creates this leakage for value and missed opportunity. So great example of companies doing it well. Let's pivot to another related topic to this. So the focus of these on-sites clearly is to understand your customer's business, professionally engage on value, but there's a personal element to it as well, right? That's the nature of going in person. And so talk to us about the relational connection that comes from being on-site with your customers from that post-sales perspective. And how has that also elevated your game to be the right partner for your customers?
Yeah. It's so important, what we're talking about here. So to summarize this, like, relational connections is what we're talking about. How to do that is a skill set that I think is far overlooked in hiring in CS and in sales. But we're really focused when we have the opportunity to get in person with our customers to be curious about what's going on in their personal lives, to your point, right? To ask good questions. Those two skill sets are so underrated. The art of asking a good question and how to be curious when interacting with someone. And so when we get in person with our customer, let's say there's 6 folks there, and then we're taking them to lunch, like, you could have a really awkward lunch, or you could have a really phenomenal lunch, depending on your ability to lead conversation and to listen and be curious about the stories around the table. And so for us, this is a very important element of the CSM's role and the entire CS team. Is we challenge our team when you're interacting with our customers. We really want you to have ears to hear what's going on in their personal lives as well as their professional lives. So examples of this are when we hear that one of our customers just became a grandmother. We want to know about that, right? We want to say, hey, let's surface that to the CSM. Maybe the CSM is going to send them something nice that they've, now become a grandmother. But we're really focused on hearing the individual stories that are going on. One, because that's what life's about. Life is too short to not actually hear somebody else's story. But two, it actually benefits, our business to understand here's who we're, talking to, here's who we're partnering with, and what's going on in their personal life. So we can help kind of push the professional side of things. Where this has really come about is I had a couple people show up in my life when I had personal stories going on, and really saw the power of this. When somebody shows up, whether it's a personal high or low, that could be a partner vendor, it could be a mentor, a coworker. But when those people show up, you have this extra affinity that comes about now towards this person, and therefore towards their organizations they're involved in. And so we were looking for those opportunities. And a lot of times what ends up happening is the opportunities come about when you lead them, right? And so I always talk about with my team, we want to lead with our weakness, which means, I'm just going to kind of crack the door open on something going on in my own life and see if somebody else wants to enter in. And if they do, then we've kind of got times to tell our stories, to understand what's going on out there across one another, and ultimately, hopefully, have a better relationship, better trust with the stakeholders that we're focused on serving as our customers.
The fact that trust opens up more on all sides, the professional and the personal side, when you open up, I think is very underrated, as you said, and it enables you to have a better working relationship too, because now folks feel more comfortable in their skin and with the person across from them in the room. So it's another thing that I feel like Aiwyn's doing very uniquely is focusing on that piece of it and not making it transactional, because there's so many opportunities for it to be transactional. And we have so many transactions that we make every day, but when it's not a transaction, I think it just changes the whole perception. So I love that point, and also the point about when you are at that lunch table. I've been in those situations, right, where it's super awkward. You don't really know what to say or how to engage. But to be able to make that smooth interaction happen and train your team to do that, I think is fantastic. How do you train your team to do that, or what are the guiding principles that drive those moments?
It's really tough. So at our stage of company, we're not actually looking to train as much of that. Right? We're looking to hire somebody who has that capability. And so when you're screening candidates, I'm looking for somebody who's super humble, who could be, lead a presentation at a boardroom, could also interact with a kindergarten class, right? Like there's a spectrum there that I'm saying, hey, if this person can really evoke emotion, tell stories, and lead a conversation in a very humble way, then I think they're likely, somebody who has natural curiosity, who understands how to ask good questions that are not yes, no, they're open-ended. That's what we're looking for. And also somebody who's really okay to sit a little bit in that awkwardness. Like the silence and the awkwardness is where a little bit of, you push somebody to question and chew on the question you're asking them. So short answer is we train. The only way we really train this today is we make sure that we lead these meetings with others who, have already done this, and we feel good about it. But we're really focused on finding folks who have that inherently already as a part of their skill set to bring to the table.
Got it. And some traits are intrinsic. It's hard to teach. I feel like this is one of them, for sure. Yep. Awesome. Well, let's transition now to the next part of the show. This is an audience favorite. I call the rapid fire questions. So there's some rules that come with this, Tanner. I'm going to ask you 8 questions, and I'm going to limit you to 1 to 2 word responses. So the first thought that comes to your mind, that's the right answer, and we'll go from there. All righty. So first question, what is the best metric of success for CS?
Retention. I think it just proves out value over time. Retention.
Absolutely. What's the worst metric of success?
I would say MPS, which is just dated at this point. It's a snapshot.
That is the most common answer that we get.
Really?
Resoundingly. People don't like it. Doesn't really work. All right. What's the most underrated part of CS?
Um, the advocacy side is underrated. So advocacy would be the word I think about, like think about the relationships, but you're trying to be an advocate to the client and their outcomes. Also, you've got to, focus on the internal business outcomes for your company. So I think advocacy is pretty difficult for a CS team member.
That's a unique answer. I've not heard that one yet. What's the most overrated part of CS?
I don't know. Travel, taking folks to dinner. I'm not sure those things are that glamorous. But there's a lot of time on the road for me
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah. Current state of CS.
Discovering AI and how to apply AI.
Absolutely. Future of CS.
I think the future of CS would be relationships, value, and AI.
All right. What's the best CS book or podcast?
Man, I don't really focus too much on CS specific. I'm really focused on the industry that I'm in the professional services CPA. So I don't have a good answer for this. I'm not your person here.
That is also a good answer because you're very vertical specific, so you gotta serve the customer.
Yeah.
So we may not have an answer for this as well, but that's okay. Best community for CS leaders, or let's just broaden it to say best community for founders or SaaS leaders.
Yeah. I mean, we're really fortunate. We've had a bunch of great investors, but I've really been impressed with the Bessemer Venture group and what they've brought in terms of just the community of portfolio companies and assets. It's really impressive. So there's a whole go-to-market course they just released, which is really cool on SaaS go-to-market. But yeah, that to me stands out if you have the opportunity to work with them.
Wonderful. All right, Tanner, we are at the last question of the show here, and I'm gonna get you to think about the future. We're calling the name of this show is called Future Customer Value, so we have to ask our guests about the future. So if you could make one prediction about where our industry is heading, and we can broaden it, right? It doesn't be about CS specifically, but where SaaS is heading, where the post-sales function is heading, what's coming down the pike, and where are we going?
Yeah, I think even just thinking about the rapid questions, enterprise SaaS, I think internally, enterprise SaaS companies are going to have to focus much less on the MPSs of the world, much more on the leading indicators of where the value is and how do we get closer to the relationships that drive the value and drive the metrics we care about, NRR, NDR, expansion. Everybody's trying to figure out, especially in CS right now, how do we use AI to become more efficient, reduce headcount, and scale with more efficiencies across implementation, support, services, success. That's a big push I'm seeing right now. And then, externally, I think we'll just see a continue increase in using data, right? So we're seeing this a lot with our customers is that we've got to continue to use data to tell the story on the value they're seeing. And there's going to be some AI applications. I'm not sure which ones. There's a lot out there right now to figure out how do we use AI with our customers. I think there's going to be just a couple that stand head and shoulders above, and we say, all right, we're still focused on knowing our customers, knowing their stories, but we're using AI to drive this value towards their desired outcomes, right? So, the short answer is AI is going to become more important internally and externally, but we're still going to be focused on value as the North Star to, a customer's desired outcome.
That is a great answer and very much aligned with that, with everything that we're thinking about doing. So we will close out there, Tanner. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure our audience will too and take a lot from it. And I'm looking forward to doing it again in the new year.
Thanks, Augur. Thanks for having me. Nice talking to you.
So much, Tanner.
Once again, thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by Foresight. If you're interested in learning more, please email them at info@gainforesight.co. That is info@gainforesight.co. Thank you.